My name is Melis and 25 years old. You owe me exactly 280 euros if we ever break up. Asterisk, those were the words that came out of my boyfriend's mouth one quiet evening. And for a moment, I didn't even know how to react. Asterisk, we were sitting together like any other couple, just talking, laughing a little, enjoying each other's company, when suddenly he dropped that sentence out of nowhere. I blinked at him, waiting for the punchline. Surely, it had to be a joke, right? Couples tease each other all the time. Maybe this was his strange way of being funny. Asterisk, so I laughed. Not a big laugh, but the kind you give when you don't quite get the humor but want to play along. Except, he didn't laugh with me. He didn't smirk. He didn't even crack a smile. His expression stayed cold and serious, like he had just given me a business statement instead of making a lighthearted joke. Asterisk, that's when a chill ran down my spine. Asterisk, I asked him, wait, you're not serious, are you? Asterisk, but he nodded as if it were the most logical thing in the world. He explained, in the calmest voice, that during the 2 years of our relationship, he had been carefully tracking everything he had ever spent on me. Every coffee, every little snack, every flower, every so-called gift. And according to his calculations, it all added up to 280 euros. He didn't say it with anger, but with this weird sense of pride. Like he was a banker presenting a well-balanced ledger. Then, to top it off, he told me with a straight face, that's how much you'd owe me if this relationship ended. Asterisk, in that moment, I didn't know whether to feel insulted, angry, or just plain sad. Asterisk, see, the thing is I wasn't some freeloader depending on him. Quite the opposite. I have a stable job at a hospital, I earn a good salary, and most of the time, I'm the one covering our dates, paying for dinners, outings, little trips that was usually on me. And I never minded, because that's what you do in a relationship. You give without keeping score. You share because you care. Asterisk, but hearing him reduce our love, our moments together, to a cold number on a list, that hurt me in a way I can't even fully explain. It was like he didn't see me as his partner, but as a financial investment, something he expected a return on if things didn't work out. Asterisk, that was the first time I realized something was very, very wrong. Asterisk, when I pressed him further about what he meant by owing him money, that's when the full truth came out. Asterisk, he explained, almost proudly, that he had been keeping a list, yes, an actual list of every single euro he had ever spent on me since the very beginning of our relationship. And he wasn't talking about just the big things, like birthdays or anniversaries. No, he meant everything. Asterisk, if he bought me a coffee, it went on the list. Asterisk, if he picked up a bag of gummy bears for me at the store, on the list. Asterisk, if he brought me flowers, yep, on the list too. Asterisk, nothing was too small. Nothing was too insignificant. To him, every gesture, every so-called gift, wasn't an act of love, but a financial entry in his own personal ledger. Asterisk, the way he explained it to me was chilling, because he didn't seem embarrassed or ashamed. He wasn't shy about admitting it. He was almost proud, as if keeping track of every cent made him smarter, more responsible, more in control. Asterisk, then he gave me an example that still makes my stomach twist. He looked me right in the eye and said, on Valentine's Day, I spent exactly 26 euros on you. He didn't say it like a man who had gone out of his way to make his partner feel loved. No. He said it like an accountant double-checking the numbers on a receipt. Asterisk, not 1 cent more. Not 1 cent less. Exactly 26 euros. Asterisk. And the tone he used made it sound like he expected me to be grateful, not for the effort, but for the fact that he had been precise. As though his ability to quantify his generosity was something to be admired. Asterisk, I remember sitting there, completely stunned. Valentine's Day, the day that's supposed to celebrate love, care, and thoughtfulness, had been reduced to a cold calculation in his phone. What should have been a memory of romance suddenly felt like a transaction. Asterisk, and that's when it hit me. To him, none of his gifts were really gifts at all. They were loans. Tiny debts stacked up in a spreadsheet, just waiting for the day he could call them in. Asterisk, it was no longer sweet. It was no longer thoughtful. It was business. Asterisk, I sat there frozen, struggling to process what I had just heard. The words echoed in my head, louder each time. A list, every year, 280 euros owed if we broke up. Asterisk, I couldn't believe it. I genuinely couldn't. Because, in my world, gifts are supposed to come from the heart. They're small tokens of love, gestures that say, I thought of you, or I care about you. They're never supposed to come with a hidden price tag, never supposed to be tallied up like entries in an invoice. Asterisk. But the way he looked at me, the way he explained it so casually, it was as if he had completely redefined what love meant. To him, love wasn't about giving freely. It was about keeping score. Asterisk. And that realization made my stomach churn. Asterisk, I thought back to all those little moments. The times he handed me a candy bar with a smile. The times he picked up a coffee for me on his way to see me. The times he surprised me with flowers. I had cherished those moments, thinking they were thoughtful gestures, symbols of affection. But now, every memory felt tainted, because behind every single gift, there was an invisible receipt. Asterisk, in his mind, every act of kindness wasn't kindness at all. It was a debt, something he expected back one day. Asterisk, that was the part that truly broke me. Asterisk, I remember thinking, if this is how he sees love, then what am I to him? A girlfriend? Or just an expense on his balance sheet? Asterisk, the more I thought about it, the more painful it became. It was like I had been tricked. Like every smile, every thank you, every hug I gave him in return for those little gifts wasn't enough, because at the end of the day, he wasn't giving them to make me happy. He was giving them so he could one day add up the total and hand me the bill. Asterisk, that's not love. That's not even generosity. That's a transaction. Asterisk, and in that moment, my heart sank, because I realized that if he truly saw me this way, then I wasn't in a loving relationship at all. I was in a business arrangement disguised as romance. Asterisk, the strangest part of all this, the part that cut me the deepest, was that I wasn't even taking advantage of him, not even close. Asterisk, I've always been independent. I have a stable job at a hospital. I work long hours, and I earn a solid salary. I never needed him to support me financially. In fact, it was usually the opposite. More often than not, I was the one covering the bill when we went out. Dinners, movie tickets, little weekend outings, I happily paid for those things without keeping track. Because that's what you do in a relationship. You give because you care, not because you expect something back. Asterisk. So when he revealed this bizarre mindset of his, it shook me to my core. Asterisk, because suddenly, I realized it didn't matter how much I gave, how much I contributed, or how much I loved him. In his eyes, none of that mattered. What mattered was the list, his list, the cold numbers he had stored away on his phone, each one representing what he believed I owed him. Asterisk. And that realization was terrifying. Asterisk, it was like our entire relationship was just a ticking clock, counting down to the day he could shove that list in my face like an invoice, as if one day he'd say, here's the total, now pay up. Asterisk, that isn't love. That isn't trust. That's a contract I never signed. Asterisk, I felt betrayed. Not just by his words, but by the way it made me rethink everything about our past. Every smile, every gift, every small moment of sweetness, it was all tainted now. Nothing felt genuine anymore. Because I knew what was hiding behind it. The calculation, the record keeping, the secret scorecard he carried in his pocket. Asterisk, and as that realization sank in, I felt a deep ache in my chest. It hurt in a way that's hard to describe. Because it wasn't just disappointment, it was the shattering of the belief that my partner truly loved me for me. Asterisk, instead, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was nothing more than a line item in his budget. Asterisk, and in that painful moment, I knew with absolute certainty something was very, very wrong. After that shocking conversation, I tried to calm myself down. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it wasn't as bad as it sounded. In my head, I tried to justify it. Some people are just naturally meticulous about money. They track their expenses for budgeting purposes, so they know where their money goes each month. It can even be a smart financial habit. So perhaps, I thought, my boyfriend was only noting down the big things, the kind of expenses that actually made sense to. Remember, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, those would be understandable. If he bought me a special gift on Christmas or took me out to dinner on my birthday, maybe he just liked keeping a record of it. That wouldn't be so strange. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I told myself, relax, it's not as serious as you think. He probably just wants to stay organized. You're reading too much into this. But deep down, a knot of unease twisted in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more. Finally, I decided to ask him directly. I looked him in the eye and said, "So, you only write down the bigger expenses, right? Like holidays and birthdays." I wanted him to reassure me. I wanted him to laugh it off and say, "Of course, I'm not that extreme." But instead, he stared at me with the straightest face, and without even a moment's hesitation, he shook his head. "No," he said plainly. "I write down everything." Those words hit me like ice water pouring down my back. Everything. It wasn't just the big, memorable events. It wasn't just the occasional splurge. It was everything. The coffee he grabbed for me on his way to work, on the list. The candy bar he handed me when I was having a bad day, on the list. The tiny little gestures that should have meant love, thoughtfulness, and care, reduced to numbers in his phone. In that moment, my fragile hope shattered. Whatever excuse I had been making for him, whatever benefit of the doubt I was giving gone, this wasn't budgeting. This wasn't harmless. This was something much darker. When he said he wrote down everything, I thought maybe he was exaggerating. But no, he meant it literally. He explained it so casually, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. A single bottle of water he once bought for me. It was on the list. A small bag of gummy bears he tossed into the cart because he knew I liked them, on the list. Even an occasional bouquet of flowers, something that should have been romanticized, neatly recorded in his little financial diary. It didn't matter how small or insignificant the item was. If money left his wallet and it had anything to do with me, it earned a spot on that list. And that realization hit me harder than I expected. You see, before this moment, I used to look back at those little things with fondness. The way he'd surprise me with a snack after a long shift at the hospital. The way he'd pick up a coffee for me on his way to see me. The way he'd hand me flowers with a shy smile, making me feel cared for. I had cherished those gestures. I thought they were signs of love, proof that he thought about me when I wasn't around, proof that he wanted to make me smile. But suddenly, all of those memories felt ruined. They didn't feel sweet anymore. They didn't feel thoughtful. They didn't even feel real. Instead, they felt cheap, hollow like entries in a receipt book, because in his mind, that's exactly what they were. It was like I could see it clearly now. Every time he handed me something, there was an invisible receipt tucked in behind it, a silent reminder that one day, he might ask me to settle the bill, and that realization broke something inside me. Because love should never feel like accounting. A relationship should never feel like bookkeeping. The very idea that I had been looking at these moments as love, while he had been calculating them as debts, made my chest tighten with anger and sadness. Nothing about it was genuine anymore. Nothing about it felt like love. It was all just numbers. The more I sat with the truth of his list, the more disturbing it became. I couldn't stop replaying everything in my mind, the coffees, the snacks, the flowers, and now, instead of warm memories, all I felt was bitterness. And then it hit me. My birthday was just round the corner. Normally, that would be something to look forward to. I should have been excited, maybe even curious about what surprise he might have planned. Birthdays are supposed to be about love, celebration, and joy. But this year, all I felt was dread. Because I already knew how it would go if he gave me a gift, no matter how small. It wouldn't be from his heart. It wouldn't be a genuine gesture of love. No, it would just be another entry on his precious list. Another number to be tallied up in the invisible invoice he was preparing for the day we broke up. And I couldn't stomach that thought. I didn't want to look at a present and wonder how much he would someday demand back. I didn't want to smile and say thank you while secretly knowing he saw it as a loan, not a gift. The very idea made my stomach churn. So I made a decision. I looked him in the eye and said flat out, "Don't get me anything this year." At first, he seemed surprised, maybe even confused. Birthdays are usually a chance for partners to show affection, but I was rejecting the idea entirely. And the truth was, I wasn't doing it to save him money. I wasn't doing it because I didn't care about celebrating. I was doing it because I couldn't bear the thought of another fake gift. Because let's be honest, if a present comes with a price tag attached, it isn't really a present at all. It's a loan. And I didn't want loans in my relationship. That moment was heartbreaking for me because I realized something important. I wasn't excited for my own birthday anymore. I was scared of it, and that's not how love should ever feel. But the madness didn't stop there. One evening, as we sat down to eat, he casually remarked that since I consume more than him when we dine together, I should be the one paying more. At first, I laughed. It sounded ridiculous, like some kind of twisted joke. But then I saw the seriousness in his eyes. He wasn't joking. He genuinely believed that because I might order an extra drink, or eat a little more bread, or choose a slightly more expensive dish, I should automatically cover the difference. It was humiliating. I had always brushed off comments like that in the past, chalking them up to sarcasm or a bad sense of humor. I thought maybe he was just trying to tease me, even if it was in poor taste. But now, after seeing the reality of his precious list, I knew better. He wasn't teasing. He wasn't joking. He meant every word, and that realization cut deep because it showed me something far worse than simple stinginess. It showed me that he wasn't just frugal, he was keeping score in every possible way. Nothing I did, nothing I received, was ever free of his mental accounting. To him, love wasn't about kindness or giving without expecting anything in return. It was about balance sheets, numbers, and debts. The idea that he saw me as someone who needed to earn my place in his life, to pay for every bite of food and every moment we spent together, filled me with anger and sadness. I wasn't his girlfriend in his eyes. I wasn't even his partner. I was more like an expense he needed to manage, a financial investment. And the more I thought about it, the more suffocating it became. Was I really in a relationship with someone who loved me, or had I unknowingly trapped myself inside a system of bookkeeping where affection was currency and intimacy was just another transaction? Deep down, I knew the answer. This wasn't love. This was accounting, and I was tired of feeling like a line item in his budget sheet. The next day, I couldn't push it out of my mind anymore. All night, I had tossed and turned, replaying his words in my head. "You owe me exactly €280 if we ever break up." It wasn't just a silly statement, it was proof that something was very, very wrong. My chest felt heavy with a mix of anger and sadness. I didn't want to keep wondering whether I was overreacting. I needed answers. I needed the truth. And more than anything, I needed to see that list for myself. So I made a decision. I called him and invited him over to my place. I didn't explain why, and he didn't ask. He showed up that evening, acting casual, like nothing had happened. But inside, I was a storm waiting to break. As soon as he stepped inside, I didn't waste a single second. No hugs, no smiles, no small talk. I stood there, arms folded, heart pounding in my chest, and looked him dead in the eye. "Show me the list," I said. My voice was calm, but firm. or this relationship is over. For a moment, he froze. His jaw tightened. His eyes darted away from mine, and I could see the color drain from his face. He looked caught like a child who had just been caught, with his hand in the cookie jar. Then, as if trying to cover up his panic, he let out a weak laugh. "Why are you being so dramatic?" he said, forcing a smile. "It's nothing. You're making a big deal out of nothing." But I didn't laugh. I didn't even flinch. I just kept staring at him. Steady and unblinking, my silence spoke louder than any argument ever could. Finally, I repeated myself, this time sharper, stronger, every word like a hammer striking down. "Show me right now." He shifted uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck, clearly stalling for time. But the longer he hesitated, the clearer it became I wasn't wrong. That list existed, and whatever was on it. He didn't want me to see. And in that moment, standing in my own living room, I realized this was no longer about money. This was about trust. And if he couldn't prove himself now, then our relationship was already over. He resisted, of course. The second the words left my mouth, he started scrambling for excuses. "You're overthinking this," he muttered, shifting uncomfortably on the couch. "It's not what you think." Then he tried another tactic. "It's just budgeting. No big deal. Everyone keeps track of their spending." But I wasn't buying it. My gut told me otherwise. And the way he avoided my eyes made me even more certain he was hiding something. I crossed my arms, planted my feet firmly on the ground, and made my final stand. My voice was steady, even though my heart was pounding. "If you don't show me right now, we're done." This time, he saw it, the seriousness in my eyes, the lack of hesitation in my tone. I wasn't bluffing. This wasn't a fight he could laugh off or charm his way out of. For a few seconds, the silence between us was so thick I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Then, finally, with a frustrated sigh, he gave in. "Fine," he muttered under his breath. "If it means that much to you." He pulled out his phone, his hands moving nervously, as though he were about to reveal some government secret. His thumb hovered over the screen for a moment before he finally tapped on a folder. Then he opened a file. Immediately, I leaned forward, my stomach twisting with a mix of fear and anticipation. But before I could even reach for the phone, he jerked it closer to himself, holding it tightly in both hands. "I'll show you," he said firmly, his voice sharp. "But you don't need to touch it. I'll scroll." That alone told me everything. He didn't want me to see too much. Or maybe he didn't want me to see how much effort he had really put into this bizarre little project. Still, I saw enough. Line after line after line, dates, descriptions, and exact amounts, all neatly logged. From coffees to snacks to small gifts. Every single euro he had ever spent on me was written down like an accountant's ledger. It wasn't just a short list, it was endless. Pages and pages of our relationship boiled down to transactions, receipts, and numbers. And as I sat there watching, my stomach twisted into knots. It was real. It was worse than I'd even imagined. Page after page, entry after entry. It was overwhelming, like scrolling through some kind of financial diary dedicated entirely to me. Every single euro he had ever spent on me was logged there, neatly organized with dates and descriptions, as if I were a business transaction instead of his. Girlfriend, €2.40. Bottle of water, €1.10. Pack of gum, €26. Valentine's Day dinner. At first, I thought maybe he only recorded the bigger events. But no, there were tiny, ridiculous entries that made my skin crawl. 50 cents, lollipop, €3.80, sandwich, 20 cents, napkin at cafe. I blinked at that one. A napkin. He had actually written down a napkin. The further I looked, the heavier my chest felt. All those little things I once thought were sweet gestures when he surprised me with candy or grabbed me a drink without me asking suddenly felt rotten. They weren't acts of love. They were debts. Small debts he expected to collect someday. My stomach churned. This wasn't budgeting. This wasn't normal. This was obsession. And it wasn't just the entries themselves, it was the way he had formatted everything, perfectly aligned, categorized, and numbered. It looked more like a corporate report than a personal note. He hadn't just jotted things down casually. He had invested time, effort, and attention into documenting every last cent. The deeper I stared, the more disturbed I became. It was as though he wasn't in a relationship with me at all. He was in a business arrangement. One where he was the banker and I was the debt. I glanced up at him, hoping to see some flicker of embarrassment, some hint that he realized how insane this looked. But instead, he seemed almost proud, sitting there with his arms crossed, watching me read, like he was showing me proof of his diligence. That pride made my skin crawl. And then, something strange caught my eye. When he closed the file for a brief moment to adjust his screen brightness, I noticed something I wasn't supposed to see. Right beneath the file labeled with my name, there were several other files, each one labeled with a different woman's name. My breath caught in my throat. What was I looking at? As he fumbled with his phone, trying to close the document and brush it off, my eyes caught something he clearly didn't intend for me to see. There wasn't just one list. There were several, each one neatly labeled with a different woman's name. My heart dropped into my stomach like a stone. My hands went cold. My breath caught in my throat. For a second, the room tilted around me. What did this mean? I forced the words out, my voice trembling but firm. Open the other lists. Right now. His eyes widened in panic, and he clutched the phone tighter, holding it against his chest like a shield. You're overreacting, he muttered. It's not what you think. But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. My gut was screaming at me, louder than ever, and I couldn't ignore it. If you don't show me, I said slowly, we are done, right here, right now. For a moment, I thought he'd refuse. His jaw tightened, his knuckles whitened around the phone, and he looked at me like I had just uncovered the darkest part of his soul. Then he sighed, a long, heavy, defeated sigh. Without meeting my eyes, he unlocked the screen, scrolled down, and hesitantly handed me the phone. His voice was low, almost pleading. Please, don't be upset with what you're about to see. I felt a chill run down my spine. My fingers trembled as I took the phone, terrified of what I might discover, but knowing I couldn't turn back now. One by one, I tapped on the other lists, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Each list looked just like mine, detailed, itemized, and disturbingly thorough. Every year, every date, every so-called gift he had ever given, not just to me, but to other women before me. Different names, different timelines, same twisted pattern. It hit me then this wasn't about me at all. This was his system, his method. He had been keeping tabs on women like some accountant of affection, reducing every relationship to numbers on a spreadsheet, and I was just the latest name on his ledger. What I found on his phone shattered me in a way I can barely describe. At first, I thought maybe I had misread it. Maybe those names weren't what I thought they were, just harmless notes or something unrelated. My brain desperately tried to find a reasonable explanation. But the moment I clicked on those folders, the truth hit me like a punch to the chest, knocking the air out of me. There weren't just one or two lists, there were three, and each one was carefully labeled with a different woman's name. My stomach flipped as I opened the first one, just like the list with my name. It wasn't vague scribbles or casual reminders. No, these were meticulous, organized, and obsessive records. Every entry had dates, descriptions, and exact amounts. €3.90, cappuccino, €12.50, movie tickets, €45, new dress, €60, lingerie. It wasn't random. It wasn't innocent. It was systematic. Every list followed the same twisted pattern. The woman's name at the top, followed by an endless trail of itemized expenses, like a financial diary of their time together. Dinners, drinks, shopping trips, little trinkets. and even intimate purchases all neatly documented, as if these women weren't people but business transactions. I felt sick. It was like staring at an accountant's ledger of relationships, except this wasn't business. These were real women who probably believed they were loved and cherished just like I once did. And here they were, reduced to numbers on his balance sheet. My chest tightened. My hands trembled as I scrolled further. The more I looked, the clearer it became. My relationship wasn't special, wasn't unique. All those memories, I thought, were ours: our first dinner, our weekend trips. Even the flowers he bought me were nothing but lines on a spreadsheet. In that moment, I realized I wasn't his girlfriend. I wasn't even his partner. I was just another case file in his bizarre, twisted system of control. He had treated me like an experiment, a project, a financial entry to be tracked and measured. The realization broke something deep inside me. The truth unraveled in front of me, and it was uglier than I could have ever imagined. Up until that moment, I thought maybe his obsession with money was just about being stingy, or maybe some strange quirk of his personality. But the existence of those lists proved something much starker. It wasn't just about keeping score, it was about betrayal. My boyfriend hadn't been faithful. This wasn't some innocent budgeting habit. He hadn't simply been obsessed with saving receipts or calculating expenses. No. This was obsession mixed with manipulation. Each name on those folders represented another woman he had been involved with, another person he had carefully deceived, another life he had turned into a balance sheet. He hadn't just been recording money, he had been recording lies. As I scrolled further, my heart sank deeper. The laundry entries especially made my stomach twist with disgust. My mind instantly filled with the excuses he would probably try to feed me. Oh, it was just a gift. Or it didn't mean anything. But no, you don't buy something that intimate for someone unless there's something deeper going on. The evidence was right there, staring me in the face. And suddenly, everything clicked. All the times he made me feel guilty for ordering dessert. All the times he reminded me I owed him for the smallest things. All the times he made me believe I was a burden while doing that to me. He was spending hundreds on other women without hesitation. He had made me believe I was too much, when in reality, I was never even enough for him. The weight of it crushed me. My chest felt tight, my throat burned, and my eyes blurred with tears. I had wasted 2 years of my life thinking I was building a future with someone who cared. But what I really was just another line on his spreadsheet, another woman in his collection of lies. And in that moment, the anger started to rise inside me, because this wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. I couldn't hold it in anymore. My chest felt like it was going to burst. My hands were trembling as I clutched his phone, my voice shaking, hot sharp as a knife. Who are these women? I demanded, my words cutting through the silence. Why do you have lists for them too? He froze, completely frozen, his face drained of color, his lips parting as if he'd been caught mid-crime. For a long, tense second, he just stared at me, his mind clearly scrambling for an excuse. And then it came the stammering, pathetic excuses. It's not what you think. They're just notes, old relationships. Nothing serious. My blood boiled. I could feel the heat crawling up my neck. Notes. He really thought I would swallow that. I pressed harder, anger spilling out like wildfire. Don't lie to me. You bought lingerie. You logged every dinner, every drink, every date. You're telling me this was nothing. Were you cheating on me this whole time? The silence that followed felt endless. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes, before finally muttering the words that confirmed everything. I've been seeing someone else, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But it wasn't physical. The audacity, the sheer arrogance of those words made me want to scream. As if cheating only counted when it was physical. As if emotional betrayal wasn't every bit as destructive, sometimes even worse. He stood there, shrugging like a guilty child, trying to downplay what he'd done. But I wasn't stupid. He hadn't just seen someone. He had been leading a double life, maintaining multiple women like projects, each one carefully tracked and recorded, while feeding me crumbs of affection and acting like I should be grateful. That realization snapped something inside me. The love, the trust, the hope for our future, it all shattered in an instant. And in that moment, one thing became crystal clear. There was no coming back from this. The rage and heartbreak hit me like a tidal wave. My body could barely contain it. My hands were shaking. My chest felt like it was being crushed. And my face was hot with tears I didn't even notice were streaming down my cheeks. I shoved his phone back at him, my voice breaking but firm. Get out. Right now, for a moment. He just stood there, wide-eyed, as if he couldn't believe I was serious. Then came the pleading, the desperate excuses. Please, don't do this. You're overreacting. It wasn't physical. You have to understand this is just my system. It's how I keep track of things. His system, that word made me sick. His system wasn't some harmless quirk. It had humiliated me, manipulated me, and turned our entire relationship into a business transaction. It had reduced every memory, every gesture, every ounce of love to a cold, numbered entry in a spreadsheet. And worst of all, it had destroyed the very thing relationships are built on, trust. I didn't want to hear another word. I didn't want another excuse. I pointed to the door again, this time with a strength I didn't even know I had. Leave now. He tried one last time, mumbling promises, swearing he could explain, that he could change. But it was too late. Love doesn't survive on lies. It doesn't survive on ledgers and guilt. So I kicked him out. And as the door slammed behind him, the silence that filled my apartment was deafening. For the first time, I could truly hear the emptiness he had left behind, but also the weight that had finally lifted off my shoulders. The man who once made me laugh, who once made me believe I was loved, had turned me into nothing more than a calculation, a line on a balance sheet, a project to be managed, all while spending lavishly on other women and making me feel guilty for existing. I felt humiliated. I felt heartbroken. I felt furious. But more than anything, I felt free, because sometimes losing someone isn't the worst thing, staying with them is. I thought that once I kicked him out of my apartment, slammed the door shut, and finally took a deep breath, the nightmare would be over. I thought I could finally sleep without my heart racing or my mind spinning. But I was wrong. Not even a full day later, my phone lit up with his name. At first, I froze. For a split second, I almost convinced myself not to look. But curiosity got the better of me, and when I opened the screen, I saw a flood of messages. The first ones came in like, desperate please. It's not what it looked like. Please, you're overthinking this. I swear it wasn't physical. He even tried the classic line. We can fix this if you just give me a chance. My chest tightened as I read. It was like he was trying to rewrite reality. As though if he said the words enough times, I'd magically erase what I saw on his phone. But I couldn't. The images of those lists, those names, those receipts, they were burnt into my memory. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My stomach twisted every time his name flashed on the screen. I thought silence would make him stop, but instead, it only made him worse. Soon, the apologies shifted into accusations. His tone changed from begging to manipulative, almost threatening. You're being dramatic. You're throwing away something special over nothing. Do you really think anyone else will put up with you? That last one nearly broke me. Not because I believed it, but because it showed exactly who he was. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He wasn't heartbroken over losing me. He was furious that I had taken away the control he thought he had. And that's when it hit me. Every word, every excuse, every attempt to twist the blame, it was textbook manipulation. He wanted me back, not out of love, but out of fear of losing the power he held. I sat there, phone buzzing nonstop in my hand, and for the first time, I almost laughed through my tears, because in trying so hard to pull me back, He had revealed the truth. He didn't regret hurting me. He only regretted losing control over me. Just when I thought his manipulation couldn't sink any lower, it did. At first, the messages were just desperate apologies and twisted attempts to make me feel guilty. But then, one night, my phone buzzed again, and this time, what I saw stunned me so much that I had to read it twice to believe it. He wasn't begging anymore. He wasn't even pretending to be heartbroken. Instead, he had sent me a long, carefully written paragraph that looked like something straight out of a business report. In it, he had calculated how much money he had supposedly spent on me throughout our relationship. Attached were screenshots of his infamous lists, the same ones that had broken my heart when I found them on his phone. Only, this time, he wasn't hiding them. He had highlighted totals, bolded numbers, and presented them as if they were undeniable proof in some twisted courtroom. His conclusion: that I owed him back. Every dinner, every tiny gift, every single expense he had ever recorded, he wanted it all returned to him. I sat there, staring at the screen, my jaw literally dropping. This man had cheated on me. He had lied to me. He had humiliated me with his obsessive control, treated me like an entry in a spreadsheet, and made me feel guilty for even existing in the relationship. And now, after all of that, he wanted repayment. It was beyond insulting. It was disgusting. In that moment, something inside me snapped, but not in the way he probably wanted. Instead of crying or panicking, I felt a cold clarity wash over me. For the first time since everything had blown up, I saw the situation with crystal clear eyes. The lists, the guilt tripping, the constant scorekeeping. It had never been love. It had never been about caring for me or building a future together. To him, I had been a line item, an expense column, a financial burden he thought he could control. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a transaction. And the realization, as painful as it was, set me free in ways his begging and manipulation never could. At some point, I realized I only had two choices. I could keep engaging in the chaos, responding to his endless stream of messages, defending myself against his twisted arguments, or I could step out of it completely. The more I thought about it, the clearer the choice became. I didn't owe him another second of my energy, so I did the only thing that would truly set me free. I blocked him, first on WhatsApp, where his messages had been flooding in like a broken faucet, then on Instagram, where he'd started leaving passive-aggressive comments under old photos, as if trying to get my attention. Finally, I blocked his number altogether. One by one, I cut off every avenue he had to reach me. For a moment, I hesitated. Blocking someone always feels so final, like slamming a door shut that can never be reopened. A part of me wondered if I was being too harsh, if maybe I should leave the door cracked just in case. But then I reminded myself, I wasn't blocking the man I had once loved. That man didn't exist anymore if he ever had. What I was blocking was the constant noise of manipulation. I was blocking the guilt trips, the control, the demands, and the never-ending attempts to rewrite the truth. I wasn't shutting out love. I was shutting out the poison that had been seeping into my life for far too long. And the silence that followed, it was the best gift I could have given myself. For the first time in months, maybe even years, my phone was quiet. No pings, no accusations, no carefully crafted paragraphs designed to make me doubt myself. Just peace. In that silence, something important clicked in my mind. I realized that real love doesn't come with receipts. It doesn't come with running tallies of who spent what, or with expectations of repayment. Gifts are meant to come from the heart, not from control. A healthy relationship isn't about keeping score, it's about generosity, care, and trust flowing naturally between two people. And once I saw that clearly, I knew I had made the right choice. Blocking him wasn't the end of something good. It was the beginning of something better. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, I felt betrayed. The heartbreak was real, and for a while it consumed me. But beneath all of that pain, There was something else quietly growing, something I hadn't expected: relief. Relief that I had uncovered the truth before wasting more years of my life with someone who didn't value me. Relief that I was no longer tied to a man who reduced me to an entry in his spreadsheet. Relief that I was finally free from the invisible chains of his control. For the first time in a long while, I could breathe. I could exist without constantly worrying about how much I owed, without feeling guilty for being loved. That weight, the one I hadn't even realized I was carrying, was finally gone. And with that freedom came clarity. I started looking back at the early days of our relationship, replaying moments I had brushed off as harmless quirks or even jokes. The guilt trips over small expenses, the comments about me owing him for little things, the subtle ways he made me feel like I was always taking, never giving enough. Those weren't quirks, they were red flags. I just hadn't seen them for what they were. Now, I see them clearly, and that clarity is a gift. It means I know what to watch out for in the future. It means I won't ignore my intuition again, no matter how small the warning signs seem. Because when someone shows you that they view love as a transaction, they're telling you who they really are. Love should never feel like debt. It should never come with strings attached or a running tally of what's owed. Real love is generous, patient, and free. It lifts you up instead of weighing you down. So I made myself a promise. Moving forward, if anyone ever treats love like a business deal, I will walk away without hesitation. Because that's not love at all, that's control wearing a mask. And I know deep in my heart that I deserve so much better.